So about a 3, because if little time is spent on the questions in the generic, then they're not much use to the company. And if you spend a lot of time on making specific questions, it's going to take a long time to make them. So it's that swings and roundabouts balancing thing between, generic or specific. And the more generic it is, the less use it is, and the more specific it is, the longer it'll take to make it. Probably about 4, because again, you got that. If it's specific, then it's generally more useful, but everything's in isolation. So you're asking random things about, so how do we link these ideas together? How do we link the processes together? And what you've got is just a bunch of random facts punched out there. And if it's a generic test, then you're basically wasting everybody's time. It's just like you've downloaded something off the internet and here's a bunch of questions. I'm going with 0 being it's dead easy to fake it, because we have the internet. And if it's a generic test, somebody else will have done the questions. And if it's things like definitions, there's the internet. If you've got a technical question, you copy and paste it and something similar is going to come up. And if you've got a scenario, no scenario that is a little tiny question, sort of 3 or 4 lines, it's going to be something that somebody else has done. You can and the worst one is if the test has been done just for this for any previous iterations. So say you had a round of interviews in January, if you do them again in May, use the same questions, those questions will be on the internet. Everybody sits there and goes, hello, how can I do this? So all those questions are on the internet. So that makes it, so unless you're going to, so that goes back to the costing part of it. Are you ready to redo your test every round of interviews? Because you're going to have to if you want to at least take that element out of it. So the 2-step stages, either 5 if the question's been written in-house, because then you've got some relevance to what you actually do. But then you've got you're missing the context and the linking and the planning and all those other bits and pieces. And if they're from the internet, about a 2. If you've just got a generic test because it's from the internet. So do you ever use this technology? No. But we put it, that was in the test we downloaded from wherever it was and paid 50 quid for or wherever it is. Yeah, I think it's one of those things. It depends on internal or external. I think a lot of these are internal or external, generic specific. It sort of balances out a little bit with it. But yeah, but probably that 4 is about right. About a 7 because it's dead easy to do and it's quick. So, because you're sitting there and you're going, oh, you want me to do FizzBuzz? Excellent. I'm just going to go and copy that from Stack Overflow and put it in here and then go on to the next question. It's just like, a part of it is it feels like if you're going to waste my time with this question, I'm going to waste this time with your answer, with the answer I give. So I think, usually it's not a problem because you can easily blast through it in 20 minutes, half an hour or something like that, depending on how many questions and what type of questions and things. But if it's just, what can you name 3 access modifiers? Yeah, that's going to take 2 seconds on Wikipedia and just copy and paste. Absolute 0, because either the questions are always completely generic. So, I mean, even ones where you can sort of pick, we'd like some SQL questions and some C# questions and things like that, you still get, what is 1 + 1? You don't get anything which is useful to the company. Is the code that's in the test, does that match how the company does it? So if the coding style doesn't match anyway, you can't judge that element to it either. And if it just pumps out a score, does it tell you the strengths or weaknesses? So are they good at SQL but bad at C#? Are they good at Java but bad at PHP or whatever the thing is? It just goes, they got 10 out of 20 or whatever. Those 10 questions might be the bit you actually need, and the other 10 questions might be completely irrelevant and you don't care. It all depends on the actual testing system, whichever the company is that's doing them. It's all of these are all. There's a lot of the same because it's like the cost of you're interviewing somebody. You've paid money out to buy a test, don't test. somebody's got to go and look at the scores, and you've got all that lot, and what was the point of it? You've just completely wasted your money. I mean, I don't know how much a test-dome test is. Yeah, and so if you spend £200 or £300 on somebody doing a test, and it doesn't really tell you anything that's useful other than, essentially a pub quiz question, which is what all of these are, that kind of level of, who was the manager of England in 1966 level of question, then it's a trivia quiz more than anything else. So yeah, I don't think it's much use for cost-wise at all, because you're paying a lot of money for something which is of no use to you. I'm going to say with 2 because in reality a lot of coding is let's go and Google and copy and paste the answer, and it is the test-dome especially is the definition of please go and copy and paste the question and then get the answer back. Thank you very much. So in that case, it at least shows you somebody's Googling skills, I suppose. So it's kind of vaguely, and some of the questions, if you're going to look at the questions, might help. But again, that depends on the company. The test-dome, I've had test-dome a lot, and yeah, so you can recognise the questions. So it's like I've already done this one 3 times. It's absolute zero. Everything on test-dome is on the internet, and it's all, they use things like Chandler Bing, and you go SQL Chandler Bing, and here's all the answers. And they use, in some of the ones, they use book names, but they don't use sort of Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. They use Harry Potter and the Room of not telling people. So it's, like a thing, if you've got, you just tick that phrase into Google, and here's the answer. And because so many people have done test-dome, those questions are all over the internet, and even all the other ones like Gorilla, they're all on there as well. It's just, it might take you 2 seconds rather than 1 second to find it. They're a complete joke. This entire system is. Oh, zero. Random facts in isolation. Oh, do you know the format? And the thing is, they have to be very small. So, do you know the format for an if statement? Yes. And there are various ways you can look it up and you can get that information out of somebody. But, for a start, Visual Studio now auto completes for you with a lot of the stuff. So if you type if, it goes. So it's kind of, it's even less of a thing that you've got to keep the format of an if statement in your head. I've got it written down. I've got it somewhere else. Usually, if you're using code, you usually just go, I'm going to copy from there and paste it from there, and then change that number over, because it's just that way of doing it. So yeah, just a bunch of little bits of pieces, and it doesn't tell you how somebody's going to fit into the team or how they approach analysing the problem, because all you get is essentially pass or fail on it. So because that they might have done very well on the question and then just screwed up the answer, or they might have misunderstood the first bit, and having humour there goes, no, it's red, not blue. Right, okay, yeah. So you end up with not very good at all. Oh yeah, 10 out of 10. It's easy to do. You can copy and paste it from everywhere, and it takes about 5 minutes. It's one of the things that goes, oh, we locked the screen down, and you're like, congratulations, I have more than one device in my house. I have 3 computers, an iPad and a phone. Okay, great, we're going to sit with all these lot. You might have locked that screen, but you haven't locked this one, that one, that one, that one. Yeah, the security aspect of it is a complete farce. It's just, of all the ways to do it, something like that, then yeah, and if somebody goes, got a test-dome test for it, it's like, yes, brilliant, thank you very much. A lot of them are so generic, like, get something from this API. Excellent. That's like bread and butter. That's like saying, have you tried typing with a keyboard? It's nothing that's actually doing much for it. And a lot of them can't. Some of them, that they've copied and pasted it from a website somewhere and done it. Some of them are a little bit more, you can tell there's something vaguely to do with the company, whether they just, find and replaced, book with shoes or whatever the company does, kind of, you find and replace. But for the cut, they take I think it's probably about 3, because it takes so much to do if you're going to do it properly. Because you've got to have somebody who's going to go, right, what are we going to? Are we going to have a sample one so that everybody can look at it and go, this is what we think should be the answer. And then somebody's got to sit and look at all of those bits of code, and it takes such a long time if you're going to do a proper job. If you're just going to look at it and go, yeah, it's got enough full stops, then what was the point in doing it? And if somebody's not going to spend all that time reviewing every line of code in it, then what was the point? And ideally, the same with the quiz. Every round of interviews, but from January to March, you've got to do a new test, because that test will be on the internet. It's just one of them things. So how much time do you want to spend doing a case study is, so probably that 3 I'm going to go with. Probably that 3 again. One of the biggest problems is when it goes, we expect you to spend 2 hours on this. Nobody has ever spent 2 hours on it, because every employer wants that completed task. So I've seen somewhere they go, if you don't finish, we understand. It's like how far along how complete is it, what you can do. But businesses know a big way to stop that. You could spend 3 weeks doing it. You know what I mean? You could, whatever it is, you could make it the most perfect system ever. And there's no way to say, it's like what I've done it before, where you've got a test plan. So you put in a test plan, you put an example of one of the kind of tests you do, and you go, and these are the other tests I would do, and you just, put them in and don't implement them. And then the interviewer goes, well, we wanted all the tests in there. And you're kind of going, well, they are essentially copied and pasted with some tweaks. I've spent the time doing actual project work, which is different. So you're looking at it and you're going, I can spend all the time doing the tests. That's easy, because it is just, copy, paste, copy, paste, copy, paste. But then I haven't done this. It's like, where do you want me to spend the time? So being as everybody is cheating, because the time is, nobody's running the time, there's no way of figuring it out as to anybody's true capabilities. I'm going to go with around 6, because the first problem is a lot of places go, please upload it to our Git. Excellent, which means that I can go on your Git and see everybody else who's done attempts at it. And if it's the same, if you haven't changed it, I can go and see everybody's tests from everyone who's ever done it. I went to one interview and they'd had about 200 people do it. So it's like, which one of these 200 ones do I want to copy from? If you wanted to, you could go and look at every single one of those, pick the one you think is best and do it. Even if people don't, that is the funniest one, when somebody goes, please copy this. Oh, by the way, please don't copy anybody else's. Okay, I'm not going to, you know what I mean? If you're going to cheat, you're going to cheat. But the other thing is that even if people have that little project they've done, they might tidy it up and then they put it on their own Git, because there's a lot of places now they want, oh, have you got a portfolio on GitHub? And you go, yes, and here are all the little projects I've done for my various interviews. And they just did I've spent the time doing it, so I'll put it on there. Excellent. So, and they've usually got the company name and the question, the blah, 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 and you just type it in, and you can go and find it on GitHub. It's not a problem. Even if you've got a bank of existing sample projects of your own, so you've got connect to an API, read a JSON file, you can mix and match and drag them all together anyway. I mean, that is that how programming is? Yeah, it's lovely, but you are just you can quite easily steal from people who've already done it and change all the variables, or you can nick a load of other people's stuff and then smoosh it together. Usually about 2, because 99.9% of the time there is no indication of what to do, what technologies, what methodologies, what language. So you sit there and you go, okay, I'm going to do this, and the feedback comes back, we don't do it that way. Or you didn't ask me to do you'd asked me to do something, you didn't give me any instructions on how to do it. So if I don't do it in the way that you say or you want, you never told me. So the relevance for me, if I use, say, mock, if I don't know mock, I'm just for the popularity part of it, kind of thing, and the whole whether you withdraw is. If I don't know mock, I could just go, I don't know it. There's not the point. So you end up with a bunch of people trying to just jam in whatever they want, which completely wastes the company's time when they sit there and go, "We use mock, we don't use mock." Or even, I think the worst one, there was definitely, we don't use that newer version. So if somebody's using like .NET 4.7, say, and you're using you do a project in .NET Core 6, and they go, "Yeah, we don't use that." Well, isn't that the one you're going to be going to at some point in the future? So isn't this an indication? And they go, "Yeah, but we don't do that now." But that's now, and it's like you can't even sort of plan for your next project or the next upgrade. It's kind of very short-sighted like that. So yeah, 2, because it's just never. The questions are just. I go with an absolute 0. They're time-consuming. The questions usually poorly defined with what you want to actually, what do you want from me? If you haven't got that thing where you've got the, what technology you use, it feels like you're sitting there and you just get handed a blank check of what you want to do. So you kind of look at the task you've got and then say, "Oh, we want to do this in 2 hours." And you go, "That's not doable in 2 hours. So do I want to spend probably all weekend doing all of this stuff, and then somebody spent an entire week doing all of this and adding all this other stuff to it?" Basically, I'm at the point when, if you say this task takes longer than 2 hours, I just don't do it. Because I've had somebody say, Wednesday night, and they say, "Can you spend 2 working days, like 16 hours, and have it back by noon on Friday?" And you're like, "You are aware that I have to sleep at some point?" It's like, you sit there going, "Okay, Wednesday, so if I spend 4 hours tonight and 4, and I'm still 8 hours, there's no way of doing it." And it's like, it's very, if you'd say, 8 hours is ridiculous to expect somebody. I mean, the other part with that is, if somebody wants that much work, it does kind of feel like somebody's getting you to do the work for free, because there is a certain employers have had that in the past where you do a bit of a technical test and then you find it actually put it live. They're using it for something. They just use it as a way of that cheap contractors. So anything that takes more than 2 hours just feels, you're all right. 5, it's in the middle because it depends who you're working with. Most of the peer reviews have been with a manager who is unrelated to the team you're working with, in which case, do I get on with Dave, the programmer? We've no idea. We know I get on with Brian, the manager, but Dave's the guy I'm working with. So, you haven't actually answered any. Does he gel with the team? We don't know because we haven't tried him with the team, and that's how. And if you can't trust that the pair programmer can tell management how we got on, then you don't trust the programmer, the developer to do that part of it. Again, about a 5 because the same kind of reason. I think the worst part is like there's the way that it's sometimes, because they don't want to tell you beforehand so you can do any prep work, but it seems it's a gotcha thing. I had one with it was can you write a Berlin clock? So the first thing I had to do was go, what the hell's a Berlin clock? And then you spend 5 minutes while the guy's sitting there looking very annoyed on the screen, trying to figure out what a Berlin clock is, how it works, and all this lot. And you're going, and when the guy you're supposed to be working with is looking annoyed at you, it's not the most stress-free of things, because you feel like, so you're kind of doing this, and it's that kind of weird little coding kata. There's loads of them that people do for these kind of tests, and they just go, "Oh, we're going to do a Berlin clock," and you go, "Yeah, I have 2 computers." I've got 2 computers, so you can sit there, and while you're sitting there going, "How you do this?" and you can. I mean, it's hard. It depends how much you can multitask. But while you're sitting there, you're going, hold on, and then you can go and look at, and you can go and find a Berlin clock C#, and you can get the code up on here, and then just type it in, and what do we do with this? Okay, we do this. It depends on the problem, but I think the biggest problem is the pressure to start typing at minute 1. If you aren't typing at minute 1, what are you doing? And so you end up with, you feel like, that's imposter syndrome. It feels like you are personally faking it because you are not typing. When they go, I want you to code a Berlin clock, you need to be typing away straight away. And it's like, so it's a very weirdly artificial thing, but you can fake it fairly easily with 2 computers. I'll probably about 6 because it depends off if you can split screen your brain to left hand and right hand to be doing something in this and then something with it. Looking up the question in this, but it's easily doable if you think, especially if it's something that you go cat at Berlin clock. Oh, there's where you've stolen it from. The thing about 4, because it is that who are you dealing with? That's the first element to it. But the second is you just cold dropped into it from absolutely nothing. There's no kind of, tomorrow, do you want to, we're going to have a look at this bit. So you can spend half an hour looking at the problem, dealing with it. It's just hit the ground, bam, one, go. And it's like, so you sit there. There's a lot of, like that kind of thing. You go, we'd like you to talk about what's in your head. Because if somebody gives you a question, you write down some notes, you plan, you think, you Google, and you're going, what are you doing? So your stream of consciousness, which is really weird, because you're kind of going, well, if we do the thing with the different, and then everything that you say is like either they want clarification or they want to pounce on it and go, oh, what about this? What about this? And you're going, well, I'm just spitballing here. You just kind of go, I could do it this way, or I could do it. So you end up with this kind of weird bit where and you've got the person who's doing it with, they've got an idea of how they want it. So there's always that kind of, if you stray off, they kind of bringing you back again all the time to what they think or what they've been told to look for. So you've got this kind of weird, I'm mouthing off while somebody who's got an idea in his head of how it should be done is trying to drag me away while I'm also trying to figure it out. And it usually just ends up crashing into a wall because you go, I need 5 minutes. I need to actually think for a standing start kind of thing. I'd go with a 1 because it is stressful as hell. Every key click, every mumbling, everything you do is monitored, questioned, pored over. It's the most stressful of all these things, and it's completely unnatural because at no point does anybody sit there. I mean, you might have somebody going, can you have a look at this? And you go around and look at a problem, and somebody go, there's this and this and this and then this isn't working. Can you figure that out? But it's kind of, like when you're working, but it's relaxed. Whereas when you've got somebody going, this is the problem, and it goes over here, and it does this, and why doesn't it work? And it's very like, it's just. And the other problem you got is does your style, does the candidate style match the employer style? Nobody knows, because you're just sitting there, you've got nothing to do it to, you've got no information on that either. So you're not really getting any information on whether the person you're with are they doing it, is the answer because you've been steered towards that answer, or because that's the way that they do things. And I have said in some of these, how do you connect to the database or whatever? And you just go, I can't tell you that. Okay, so I'll just make some stuff up, shall I? So it's kind of, even when you've got somebody there to kind of, not guide, but provide that other part to it where you're supposed to their information, your information, which is the whole point of it. It's always, no, you're just typing and I'm watching you. Did you write them? Did you take them off the internet? Because It's probably about a 4, something like that, because you've got, if the questions are copied off the internet, the answers will be. So you've wasted pretty much everybody's time. And if they're written in-house, you're going to have to use somebody to sit there and mark it and then question how you're going to answer the questions. And either way, how long your time to meeting room up for. I mean, a lot of places rent the meeting rooms. If they're smaller places, they've got their own build. They rent a meeting room by the hour or something. Do you want to rent a meeting room for an hour for someone to just sit there and go and answer a bunch of generic questions that somebody's downloaded from the internet? It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. It's about 4, I think. I think this is 4. I mean, one of the things, it depends on the type of test. Sometimes for these they are an exam, in which case, yeah, okay. But then if you've got things where I've had one of these where you sit down, you get given a project to do, and it's like the computer isn't set up how I use it. You've got none of the tools that I use. I don't have access to any of the sort of notes or OneNote bits of code that I can steal. And for the next hour, I'm going to just drop you bunches of random questions. I don't know. It's how does that give you an accurate representation of what somebody does, how they work, how would they work with you, what somebody's capabilities. I had one test where it was on a Visual Studio, and it was on a Macintosh, and I had to edit the hex codes for CSS. Where is the hash key on a Macintosh? I have no idea. And I'm sitting there, and I can't copy and paste because I've never used a Macintosh in my life. And he's sitting there going, and he went, "You didn't do very well on that test." I was like, I spent 20 minutes trying to figure out how to put a hash mark because or copy and paste. There was just no way of doing it. And it's like, yeah, well, that was like the the absolute sort of nadir of in-house tests. Where you go in, it's a hardware where I can't actually do anything on a VM. Do a copy of it, and that's the worst one. But I've had a lot of ones which are similar, where they're going like, we've got the Visual Studio 2015 came out yesterday. Okay, you can use that one. Okay, I don't know any day. Is there any difference between that and one I've been using? I don't know. I have a mobile phone with the internet on it. Because even if you can do some research, a lot of them go, you can research some of the things on the computer you're on, but you're not going to do everything on it, because that just makes you look like you're just going, you are cheating. And even if you take somebody, if you do take somebody's phone off them or something weird like that, for years I've carried a notebook with things in, just the shorthand, just kind of, and you get that out and go. FizzBuzz, the first time I ever did FizzBuzz, it was like, then the second time, I was like, this is a common thing, is it? So I just went and wrote down FizzBuzz in the book. So you can figure it out fairly quickly, but if not as quickly as I can just go and type it in and spend the time on answering a question that's somewhat more useful than FizzBuzz. About 3, it's fairly easy, because mobile phones exist, which a lot of unless you are going to sit and watch somebody not use it, which in itself is unnatural. You know what I mean? It's like you are going to look things up. You're not sure. I can't remember how to. What is the structure for an if statement? Say, I can't remember. You go and look it up. That's how That's why we invented writing. We don't need to remember everything. About a 3, because it's just a bunch of isolated things. How do they link it together? How do they fit into the team? How do they approach analysing the situation? None of those things are actually covered. It's just, here's a question, what is the answer? It's, again, pub quiz kind of thing. That's all it is. It's one of those things, it's probably about a 4, because it's unrealistic, and it does, a lot of the time it does feel like you set it to fail with them. The questions are so, I'm a C# developer. Here are some C#. Oh, it's a Java question. Why have you given me a Java question? Well, just to see how you do with it. I don't know Java. Why are you tainting my water supply with Java? It's like that kind of thing. But they don't take long. The questions are a lot of the time are very predictable, because you know that please define what solid is comes up in every single interview. And if it isn't in the face-to-face part of it, it will come up in a test, and you've got to sit there and regurgitate solid, blah blah blah. And it's just, there's a lot of everything's, like I said before, and when one company does it, another company does it, because it goes to the top of the questions you should ask a C# developer, questions you should ask an HTML developer, or whatever. You can see those same questions percolate to the top. I don't think any of them have been. If it's an exam, then it's basically a test of short-term memory, or a test of how quick you can look something up on the internet. And you can figure this. There's things like solid always comes up, and then the last bunch of interviews I had, access modifiers and reference types, and that was every single. And 6 months ago, you wouldn't find reference types and access modifiers. It was something else. So as soon as you've had one interview, you know what kind of questions every other interview is going to ask you. So, yeah. And I don't think any kind of exam with a bunch of little tiny individual questions really tell you much about how somebody codes. It tells you whether they can answer what is an if statement. Please, what's the layout of it. And then the case studies, you are stuck with that thing where, how long are you expecting somebody to do this? And realistically, can you tell if somebody spent 2 hours on this, or 12? Or in some cases, I know people who've spent 40 hours on a 2-hour technical test, and you're going, this person's brilliant, look what they did in 2 hours. No, they spent a week because they got nothing else to do. It was pandemic, they were locked down, they have no children, they were just bored, so they just they got done it. So they did this fabulous system. It's like, yeah, how what use is that? I think the best thing with most interviews is you can usually judge somebody. When you talk to somebody, and you can say, how did you do this? How did you do that? The actual nuts and bolts of, did you use an if or a for or a while? Or did you use this method of database access or this thing? It doesn't matter so much as, can you do it? And we can tweak it. I found that when I have done interviews with people, if somebody can connect to a database, then they can connect to a database using whatever method you use. And most people are quite happy, because you want that consistency between all your products. So even if there's some fancy new way of connecting to a database, we'll leave that one and we'll make that a separate, that will be an epic for later on. We're just going to go, let's get this, we're going to carry on using this really old crap way of doing it, so that everybody who comes in knows how to connect to the database and get the data out. You might not like it, and then we'll change later, and we'll all go as a group. And if somebody can connect to a database one way, they can connect to database another. And if they don't know the exact connection string to connect to SQL, does it matter when you can go and look it up? And yeah. I think probably the case study, because you can do it in your own time, and effectively you can sit there and you can tweak whatever code you've already got, and you can sit there and go, I've got a bit of code that I wrote to connect to an API, I've got the Postman file for it, I've got the this, the that, the other, I've got a demo web page, and I can make that slightly better the 2 hours I've got than I had it before. So, and if you've only got half an hour, you changed a few bits and pieces we want and chuck it out the door. Is it any good? Maybe, maybe not, but you didn't tell me you wanted me to use NUnit for your testing, so I did it in mock. Don't blame me.